Hi, it's Michelle Ockers. It's the day after the ATD 2016 conference, and I'm sitting in the convention centre, the Colorado Convention Centre at Denver. Wanted to take a moment to share some of the key insights from sessions I attended during the conference. First insights are around aspects of personal leadership. I attended one session called Leading with Impact and Influence by Amy Franco from Impact Instruction. And Amy really spoke about leading from the inside out and not being knocked about by external circumstances, and not letting them dictate how you show up. So she spoke about creating your own leadership path to create kind of like a ripple effect on other people around you, to have influence, impact and inspiration. She looked at some research from the Centre for Creative Leadership that identified 7 key factors in future leadership skills, and I'm just going to read these out. Communication, collaboration, being an agile learner, multicultural awareness, strategic thinking, self-motivating, being adaptable and being social. And just touching on one aspect of these, I really liked the tips for building your resilience, which is something I think we can all do a little bit more of. And these were tips around having a sense of purpose, developing a strong network, self-care, asking what can I do right now, practicing reframing and having a gratitude practice. Another session that I got a lot out of for myself was around thought leadership, and there were 2 really dynamic ladies who led this session, Alexia Vernon and Halali Azule. I'll spell them out when I blog on this. And before they went into different activities that you can engage in for thought leadership, they talked about what thought leadership is and suggested that you don't have to carve out a completely original area of thinking or an original idea, but it's about bringing your own authentic voice to the topic and to articulating what you want to say about that topic and bringing your perspective. They initially looked at questions to help you uncover your focus area for thought leadership, and they stressed the role of building strong networks and the value that adds to thought leadership. And then they went through a whole stack of different activities in the areas of writing, speaking, service, media, hosting and online training, all of which were really useful. Sticking with the theme of leadership, there's no way I couldn't mention the amazing keynote by Brené Brown, and most of you have probably seen her TED Talk on vulnerability. She was a fabulous speaker who was really authentic, spoke to her topic really well, and it's a topic that can be quite raw, and you kind of got the feeling sitting there, and lots of other people said this to me as well, that she was reaching out directly to your heart, talking about topics that were relevant to your personal life around themes such as vulnerability and trust, but also that she was speaking to your head in an organisational context around bringing trust into the workplace and suggesting that as a leader, you have to make a choice between comfort and courage, because it takes courage to do the essential work of being a leader, which is to go to the places that other people maybe don't want to go to, the places around emotion and behaviour. And she spoke quite a lot about the 4 pillars of courage: vulnerability, clarity of values, trust and rising skills, which is about how to get back up after a fall. And she just really made me want to embrace life, to live a bigger life and to be the very best leader that I possibly can. So a big thank you to Brené Brown. I'm definitely a fangirl now. The next area that I came to the conference really wanting to know more about was the science of learning. So I went along to the Community of Practice Science Learning Express, the panel, and there were 4 different speakers who spoke about different aspects of the science of learning and then opened up for questions. The first was Paul Zak, who's the Chief Research Officer at Olfactor, and he talked about trust as a basis for effective culture and shared some really interesting research which uses oxytocin as a signalling mechanism for trust. So Paul Zak, ZAK, if you want to look up his work. Next was Sebastian Bailey, who's a psychologist with a PhD in learning transfer, and he's used his research to develop a model for supporting learning with a bite-sized methodology approach, and he has founded Mind Gym. Patty Shank, who's PhD and president of Learning Peak, did a great job in a very short period of time debunking some of the myths around neuro anything really, not just neuroscience, when organisations claim or vendors claim, this approach or this product is backed by neuroscience. She's suggesting you need to be really wary. and that really we haven't learnt much about learning from neuroscience, but we know a lot about learning from cognitive science, and that we should really all be paying a bit more attention to that and applying the learning from that, which I certainly will be looking into more deeply. And then finally was Will Thalmeyer, who is a PhD consultant and research translator, and he spoke about ways of improving smile sheets, which I'm sure is something that anyone working in an organisational training context could benefit from. The next area that I was really interested in here was benchmarking and data. And I had a great conversation with Laura Overton of Towards Maturity, who specialise in benchmarking and research around organisational learning. We discussed her benchmarking tool, the Towards Maturity benchmarking tool, which is open at the moment. And I would strongly encourage you to go and complete that. I've recently done that, and it's given me some really good data to look at where my organisation sits compared to all of the benchmark for the organisations that have completed it, and a whole range of modern learning approaches, and help me to start nutting out some areas for improvement. Laura also spoke with Paul Caspo from Good Practice about how managers learn and improving how managers learn using an evidence-based approach. And what was interesting, Laura's data has shown that only 30% of learning professionals understand how their people actually learn. And Good Practice has done research with 500 managers on how they deal with unfamiliar challenges. And it turns out that ease of access to answers trumps the perceived effectiveness of answers on solutions. So people will go with the easiest way to access information and answers, even if they know that it may not be the absolute best quality answers that they're going to get back from that method. So lack of access and lack of relevance of content in intranets were two areas that were highlighted as barriers to people using those channels to access information to help solve problems. And then the final session I wanted to mention today was one from the really super energetic Dan Steer, who had us cheering along at the right times. It was on practical uses of social media in formal training. His objective was to ensure that everybody left with something practical that they could put into action straight away to improve their formal training. And I tell you what, he delivered. Great session. He provided some basic principles around only doing in the room what you need to do, and thinking about using social media tools to do other things that don't need to be done in the room. He also suggested you need to think about the type of activity you're doing, the objectives of the activity, and identify the best motivating and most useful tool. One tool I learned about at that session, which I'll definitely be looking to use, is Ginkgo, which is a collaborative note-taking tool, which is absolutely awesome, particularly as you can download the collaborative notes into a Word format and make that really available as a readily accessible resource afterwards. So thank you, Dan. The other thing I wanted to do was to thank the ATD. 10,000 people, huge conference venue, amazing organisation. They did a great job at every single aspect of the organisation. And as a speaker, I really appreciated the opportunity to be here and to share a case study. So I don't know that I'll be back every year. It's a long trip from Australia, but I'm certainly planning on being back in 2 years' time. I will be blogging and sharing more of my notes from the session over the next couple of weeks. So look out on my blog, www.michelleockers.com, for more insights.